But a small community, I suppose. Emneth, I don't know how big it is now. Is it bigger or smaller now than it was in his day?
Much bigger than it was in his day,
right,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's about a population of something like 3,000.
So what I'm now fascinated about is the vicarage must still be there, obviously.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
is a vicar still in the vicarage?
No, there's a new vicarage. The old vicarage was sold, and that's now a private home. And there's a new vicarage built almost next door.
So somebody has the private home that had a wonderful train set in the attic.
That's right, they do, yes.
And whatever happened to the train set? Do we know?
Oh, I wish we knew. No, I don't have no idea.
I suppose the trains went to Stroud.
Yep, I mean, the Reverend Awdrys went to Stroud when he left.
Went to Stroud, and he also had a smaller train set which folded up, which he came out at the garden fete and various things, which was long as that you'd fold it over.
And at the time, did his train set, did they have engines with faces on, like Thomas the Tank Engine, or were they just? Does anyone know? Is that where they were kind of the whole look of them?
I don't think those had names.
I don't think they had names.
It was just a train layout.
Just a train layout. Do you know? I'd love to have seen that. I bet there are pictures of it, aren't there? Somebody must have pictures.
I'm fascinated by it. Do you think he based any of the actual train characters on any of the village characters?
I'm not quite sure about village characters, but he was great friends with another vicar, and certainly the two of them appear in one of the books, and honestly I can't remember which one, but there's certainly an image in one of the books of the two vicars operating a train.
How lovely.
Dobby, now we've got to ask, before I ask you this question, why are you called Dobby? D-O-B-B-I-E, where does that come from?
Well, I've been called Dobby ever since I was born, I think.
Well, what... Have you got a real name, and you'll tell us?
I've got a real name which nobody knows and which I don't repeat.
And it doesn't rhyme with Dobby?
No.
Okay.
We're not going to
I only know one other that was called it.
Yeah.
And she had the same Christian name, so whether it was years ago, whether it was a term for saying it, I don't know.
And you're not going to tell us the real name
it
now?
won't get any farther because I don't repeat it.
I love that. That's great. So, what was I going to ask you now? I've lost my train of thought now. Oh, do you think you're depicted in any of the books in any way?
I wouldn't have thought so.
No? Was there a real fat controller anywhere? Did the Reverend Awdrys ever say, that fat controller, that's Charlie Farnsbarnes?
That's what I was trying to get at earlier, but in a really subtle way. Now you've just made it really obvious.
Yeah, well, why not? But
somebody in the village might still live there and be terribly offended.
I think they'd be honoured.
I don't think that he based it on anyone. I sometimes wonder whether the man who drove the tram, Mr. Rands, whether he was depicted as a driver. You see, you don't know, do you?
No, I'm not sure.
Because he was quite friendly with him, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
When he
the
got
Reverend
the history
Awdrys,
of the tram.
Yeah, the Reverend Awdrys used to ride on the footplate of the tram along with the other Reverend Teddy
Boston.
Teddy Boston, that was the other gentleman, yeah. And the pair of them used to ride along on the footplate of the tram.
Do you think the Reverend Teddy Boston was a portly gentleman on whom the fat controller might have been based?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, I just a thought.
Do you have any die-hard Thomas the Tank Engine fans ever turn up in the village that you hear of? You know,
No, I've never heard of that personally, so no.
And we better reveal, because I said earlier on, I happen to know, reading the stories, they're based... Thomas the Tank Engine is supposed to be running the engines on the Isle of Sodor, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I said, where did that come from? And the questmaster, who sets all the clues for our treasure quest, says, it's from the Diocese of Sodor and Man, as in the Isle of Man. Oddly, while Man exists, Sodor doesn't, so Awdrys used it as the island in the stories. Is that what you know?
He also adds, if we'd have remembered the clue we had at the time, we'd have known this.
Listen, we're no good with the clues on the day. The fact we might be able to remember them weeks later is impossible. So, how does Emneth celebrate the Reverend Awdrys? I mean, we know there's a stained glass window in the church. Is there any other kind of sign that says "Home of Thomas the Tank Engine" or anything?
No, I'm afraid there isn't. Perhaps we ought to get one.
I don't think they appreciated him, really.
Oh,
probably not.
But it's world famous now, isn't it? I know it's been bought by a company. I mean, I think the Awdrys family sold it all off, didn't they? The rights to use it. I think so. I mean, I may be remembering that wrong.
You also say they went to Stroud, so the family went to Stroud. Is it a bigger thing in Stroud?
Yes, they do things in Stroud because they had something recently. Because I'm in touch with his older daughter.
Oh, lovely.
And they did something in Stroud a while ago.
Well, we need a Thomas the Tank Engine Festival in Emneth,
But
don't we?
they've dedicated a special stained glass window in the church.
We have got a window in the church,
Yes.
which
is where our clue was.
was a special thing.
So there can't be too many people now left in Emneth who had connections with him, who knew him. I mean, there's you, Dobby, and Bob, you knew him as a schoolboy. You were a schoolboy, not Reverend Awdry, obviously.
I also knew him as the vicar who officiated at my wedding.
Ah, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Did he?
It must have been, he left Emneth in 1965 to move to Stroud, and we were married on August Bank Holiday weekend in 1965,
Ooh.
and he officiated at our wedding.
One of the last, then.
Must have been one of the last that he did, I'm sure.
Okay. Did he talk about? I mean, at the time, I suppose Thomas the Tank Engine wasn't as famous as it is now. Did he talk about it much? Did he say?
No, he was very modest about his writing. I think he just did it.
Oh, yes, I think it was something that he did.
Well, it's fascinating, and there it is in West Norfolk.
And isn't it, I'll tell you the loveliest thing, that it all started because his son had measles, and the first story came from that. Isn't that wonderful?
That is a nice story. Well, thank you ever so much for telling us more about him, and now at least we know. And if you want to go to the church in Emneth, there is only the one church in Emneth, isn't there? There is a stained glass window with Thomas the Tank Engine. I didn't see it, Becky. Is it Thomas the Tank Engine?
Yeah.
So I know it's
Just as
important.
you come in the door, it's on the right-hand side.
That's right.
It's very important to have saints and things in stained glass windows, but how nice there's one of Thomas the Tank Engine. Possibly the only one.
I'm sure.
I bet Stroud hasn't got one, has it? Has Stroud got a stained glass window with the Thomas the Tank Engine in, Dobby?
I think it could have.
See,
I don't know.
I bet it's not as nice as the one in Emneth.
I'm sitting here now. I know I'm loving talking about Thomas the Tank Engine. I am now trying to work out what Dobby's real name is.
Well, don't. She doesn't want you to
I
know.
know she doesn't want
anyone
me-
else
I
to
wouldn't
know.
say
And I
anything.
certainly don't want it broadcast.
No, I won't say
Yes.
nothing. But I'm. Do you know, she flung me a look then, which said, "Don't you dare!" Listen, thank you ever so much for coming. A delight to meet you both, Dobby. Thank you very much for making the journey, and thank you for reliving the Reverend Awdry for us.
And thank you.
It's been fun.